just that you now have a good amount of cash that you've saved diligently over time, and now you want to do something with it.
However you've come across that irregular income, you have an opportunity.
So that's one of the huge benefits, is scalability, and doing so while running it remotely from a laptop. We're not talking about scalability, but you need to sacrifice all your time and be in the office 12 hours a day and never see your family. You can run this business from a laptop from anywhere on the planet.
We've come to the bright side now and realised that when you've got a high profit per order and you've got low ongoing maintenance for a business, it really makes it a joy to run a business in that way.
It's not just a cash flow play, you are also building industry value or enterprise value so that you can then sell the asset as a whole eventually.
The businesses that we run, they really do become a lifestyle business where, because you've decided this particular business model where you can outsource almost everything, you can actually increase the amount of time you spend with your family while still running and growing a highly profitable business.
There aren't many other ways that you can take £5,000 to learn how to build a business and then generate hundreds of thousands of pounds over the course of the first few years in both earnings and then potential sale value as well. Welcome to the Dropship Unlocked podcast, where we unlock the secrets to high-ticket dropshipping and achieving financial freedom. I'm Lewis Smith, founder of Dropship Unlocked, and I'm joined by James Erdley, client success coach at Dropship Unlocked. Each episode, we'll be sharing our experiences and providing you with the tools you need to build a successful e-commerce empire of your own. From zero to owning £1 million online business, we'll help you achieve the ultimate freedom over your time, location, and financial future. And when we're not recording the podcast episodes or running our own e-commerce businesses, you'll find us helping people like you launch their own high-ticket dropshipping businesses. To learn more about working with us, head over to dropshipunlocked.com/free. Now sit back, relax, and get ready to access your full potential with the Dropship Unlocked podcast.
Welcome back to an episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. My name is James Erdley, and I'm joined again today by serial entrepreneur and founder of Dropship Unlocked, Lewis Smith. Today, we want to delve into an exciting topic of how to invest a lump sum of money to provide a sustainable and long-term income stream. We often hear about people that have come into some form of irregular income, whether that be a redundancy package, diligent savings, selling a business, perhaps you've had a work bonus, or maybe an inheritance. However you've come across that irregular income, you have an opportunity. So today we want to dive into the options that you have in terms of making that a long-term wealth sustainable income stream. So Lewis, firstly, what options are there out there for people who have come into a lump sum? What options do they have to generate a sustainable income stream?
So typically there might be a few different reasons why somebody's come into a lump sum of cash, a windfall type payment, and they might be things as simple as redundancy, taking redundancy from an employer. Or it might be that you had a business previously that you then sold, and now you have this kind of lump sum of money that you want to do something with. Get your money working for you. Other things might be that you've sold a property and now you don't want to invest it straight into another property, but you maybe want to consider your options with that lump sum of cash. Could even be things like work bonuses or inheritance from a family member. So lots of different ways. Or even if it's just you've saved up a pot of money and it wasn't a lump sum payment, it's just that you now have a good amount of cash that you've saved diligently over time, and now you want to do something with it. So there are a few different options that people would usually go to when they have a lump sum of cash at their disposal like this. The first would be investing in property. So that would be the kind of traditional, put your money in bricks and mortar route that a lot of people would take. The next would be investing in more traditional investments. So things like stock market, stocks and shares, things like that. And then the third, and the one we'll probably focus on most today because it's our area of expertise, is launching a business, right? So whether that means actually buying a business that's already been launched by somebody and getting a bit of a head start, perhaps, or using the money that you have to fund the launch of your own business. So a good example of this is a friend of mine who I met while I was traveling abroad. I met him and he was running a high-ticket dropshipping business using the model that we talk about today. And I asked him how he got started with that. And he said, I actually bought the business. And so kind of dug a bit deeper into his circumstances. And he said he had been in a high paying job previously, had taken a payout of whatever it was, like 120,000 or something, and had decided to put 60 of that into buying a early stage dropshipping business that was using the high ticket domestic dropshipping approach. and it was already up and running, right? So I think it was making like maybe £2,000 net profit per month, right? And oftentimes these businesses will sell for something like a 30 times monthly profit multiple. So business making £2,000 net profit per month, sells for 60k, he goes in and buys it, right, for that. Now he knew that he could have probably just started his own store and not spent that 60,000, but it might have taken him a little bit of time to get there. It might have been a bit more of a slog. He'd have to hustle to really like grow it, put a lot of time in. And he was traveling, he was living abroad. He wanted to relax and enjoy his time. He had the money at his disposal. So he thought, well, why don't I just take a proven business that's already working? Someone else has put in the initial groundwork to do because they had a lot of time, but maybe not so much money. And then he could supercharge that and take it to the next level. So people think that you buy a business for £60,000 and it would then take you, say, 30 months before you would realize that investment back, right? 30 months of 2,000 per month is going to get you back your 60,000. However, what that fails to consider is what do you do with the business once you take it over? He knew that if he had put some time into it, say he invested in some mentorship, some training, he could definitely get that from 2k per month up to £10,000 net profit per month, right? So it wasn't long before he did that, just by things like increasing the conversion rate on the store, on the product page, or optimizing the page speed, or signing a few more suppliers, or, negotiating slightly better profit margins with existing suppliers, maybe adding in a few upsells and cross sales and things like that here and there. Now, say that he got it up to £10,000 profit per month. I don't know the exact numbers, but just, hypothetically, say he got it to that point after 6 months of working on it, which isn't unfeasible at all. That store, using the same multiple that he bought it for, would now be worth £300,000, 30 times the monthly net profit of £10,000, right? So the people who say he's crazy putting £60,000 into a business that he could have just started himself, well, he's 5x'd his investment in under a year if he's done that, that you're not going to get those kinds of returns in the stock market unless you take a huge amount of risk. The reality is when he bought that business, he could have done nothing and still just earned his money back over 30 months. But he decided to invest in himself, go into a mentorship program, get coaching, get consulting, learn how he could make it better. And the beauty of it is that not only did he generate that into a business that he could then sell for 300k, but if he chose not to, he could just extract £10,000 profit per month from the business, continue to run it, have it fund his lifestyle. And also he'd have the skills that he invested in to make the business again in the future if he decided to do it from scratch or invest in another one. So you can just see why, whether you put your money into property or the stock market, or you choose to invest it into launching or even buying your own business, you have full control over increasing the value of the business if that's the option that you choose. And obviously you then have those skills for life as well. So it's worth considering all your options, but I certainly know which I would go for.
Interesting. It's an inspirational story. It illustrates perfectly the opportunity that you have if you do have a lump sum of cash. Clearly, he made, theoretically £240,000 in a year, but he started with £60,000. So there's opportunities out there that you can get to the next level quite quickly if you have a lump sum of cash already to invest. So I heard a stat recently that I'd like to share, because I heard that 88% of millionaires in the US did not actually have a windfall of cash. So they became millionaires off their own back. So that's great news for everyone else. If you haven't got a windfall of cash, that the majority of millionaires don't have that to start with. But at the same time, what that does show is if you do have a windfall of cash, clearly you have an advantage over so many other people that make it anyway. So you should use that and really start to think about how you can use that opportunity in the best way that you possibly can. So clearly there are options for people to have a think about if they have this lump sum of cash. And a quick reminder that obviously we're not investment professionals or financial advisors. So for your specific circumstances, we would recommend that you seek specific advice. However, we can certainly go through the options and the considerations that you might have before deciding where to go with that lump sum of cash. So, Lewis, we've talked about the three options. What would you say are the pros and cons of each of those options?
Yeah, each of them have their own benefits and drawbacks. So, I mean, starting a business provides you with control over your income, right? It provides you with a high earning potential, but it does require that initial time input, that effort that you need to put in, especially if you're building the business up from scratch. Or from a very low, say you buy it for a low amount and you want to really increase that profit, you are going to need to put in some time. And of course, with business entails risk. Not to say that the other two options don't entail risk, but of course, all three of them, there is an element of risk that you have to consider. And with property investment, it can certainly, again, provide a nice stable income stream through rent and, potential capital growth over time. If that's something that you want to look at, that's not necessarily the case for all stretches of history, but over a long enough time frame, then properties usually will go up in price, right? But it requires a significant upfront investment, usually, unless you're going to go into it highly leveraged, in which case you're then at the disposal or the mercy of rising interest rates and lending rates and things like that. So it's obviously that's a consideration, not to mention the ongoing costs and potential property market downturns overall in terms of price fluctuations at the capital level, but also in terms of like ongoing considerations, stresses, being woken up in the middle of the night because of a leaking pipe or a problem that your tenants report with the property or something that, there's it's not like it's a fully passive model when you do that, unless you decide to get it managed. But even so, we've talked about this before, just getting it managed, the buck still stops with you. Ultimately, they're going to still come back to you, whoever's managing it, if there's a problem you need to fix. And if there's no tenant there, then, you've got no one to pay the rent anyway. So that's a consideration. None of these things are kind of, an answer to everything. Investing in the stock market, it can yield high returns over a long term if the market conditions are favorable. It's, of course, subject to market volatility. And I think my view on investments in the stock market has changed significantly over the last few years, down to a few key books that I read. So I thought I'd run through a couple of book recommendations here for anybody that's kind of in that world or considering putting money into the market. Now, you may be way further down this rabbit hole than even I'm at, but a great little book, if you're kind of just dipping your toe into the water of this stuff, is a book called The Little Book of Common Sense Investing by John C. Bogle, who I believe is the founder of Vanguard. So a credible source to be, listening to and reading. But I just found that book was really accessible, easy to understand, and it fundamentally changed my perspective of risk as well and how I understood risk. And if you want a more in-depth version of that, like a lot of these, there's kind of like a basic entry-level one, and then there's like the one beneath the surface that's the real in-depth one, The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. Warren Buffett quoted that as one of the most influential books in his investing journey. So again, comes highly recommended. But yeah, I think these books fundamentally changed my philosophy on how I looked at investing and look at the market. And I guess if I were to summarize, I now look at it in the sense that I would never try to time the market. I would never try to pick individual stocks. I would always look at a highly globally diversified, low-cost type index tracker fund to track the market over the long term. I'm not going to try and time it and say, I think the market's at a dip, I'm going to buy now and then sell when it's at a peak again. Like Warren Buffett says, don't look for the needle in the haystack, just buy the haystack. And so I think that's the thing that fundamentally changed my opinion of stock market investing. So yes, I'm invested in the stock market. Yes, I think as a long-term solution, it's great. But if you come into a lump sum and you're looking to multiply that quickly, then I would say that there are more in-control ways that you can achieve that outcome rather than putting your money in something that you ultimately don't have control over. But we've seen over the long term, 30-year time horizon, it's always done very well. Another couple of books that you can look at as well for investing that I've found really beneficial were Unshakable by Tony Robbins, which is a great book. And again, that's a kind of a condensed version of a longer book called Money Master the Game, which is a really good book as well for learning a lot about investing and money and mindset on money. So yeah, I think it's just overall, it's essential to understand risk tolerance with all of these things, time commitment, and also weigh it up against your short, medium and long-term financial goals before deciding which route is best for you.
Definitely. Yeah, some good book recommendations there. I can vouch for Tony Robbins' Money Master the Game, and he speaks to various high-level investors to get their opinion. And the spoiler, the overarching sort of advice that he gives right at the end of the book is that the best thing you can do is not to time the market with stocks. It's just to invest in a long-term passive investment vehicle, such as a low-cost index fund. But that's all of the common advice around stock markets. But what we're particularly interested in, as this is the Dropship Unlocked podcast, is the first route. So that's all about starting a business. And more specifically, we're interested in the high-ticket dropshipping business model that's worked so well for both of us. So my belief is that the best vehicle for wealth creation is your income instead of any sort of long-term savings plan that you might have or investment plan that you might have. If you can double your income, it's going to have a much larger impact on your long-term wealth rather than having that absolute perfect investment strategy, in my opinion. So Why does business and starting your own business, why does that present such a great opportunity for people?
Yeah, I think it comes back to control, and it's the amount of control and levers that you can pull to dictate what the outcome is. That's difficult with investing in a third-party asset like stock markets or investing in property where you don't have control over the market conditions. With business, you can be agile, you can adjust, you can adapt, you can change what you sell, you can change the way you sell it if you want to. So our system of dropshipping, which we call the home turf advantage model, is an e-commerce model where you're selling high-value items through your e-commerce store, so virtually through a website. You don't buy the inventory, you don't buy the stock up front, but instead you only purchase the products from your suppliers once you've made the sale. So once the money is in your bank account, then you go and purchase the item, right? So it reduces that risk. You're not going and buying stock hoping it will sell. You're only buying the stock once you've already sold it. Now, the home turf advantage is the business model that I use and now you use as well, James, and it provides us both with a consistent monthly income stream from our stores. But the important thing to mention is once it's up and running, there's very little ongoing maintenance with it, right? It's very passive once you get it to the point of getting there. It's not from the start. You front load the work, you have to build systems and put teams in place to get the thing up and running. But once it is, there are some great benefits to it. Now, some of the reasons that we chose this model include the fact that high ticket dropshipping allows for much better profits per order, right? So we're talking not selling a product and making maybe £10, £15, £20 in profit on a sale, but instead imagine making hundreds of pounds in profit on a single transaction. And we make sales like that every day, which make £200, £300, £400, £500 in profit on a single sale. Right, so it's really low volume of orders required, which means you need fewer transactions, which means less admin, which means a much better lifestyle business for you if you want to have time freedom and autonomy and control over your time. It also means that usually because we work with UK-based suppliers, you're dealing with much more reliable, reputable, easy to communicate with suppliers who are on your time zone. And those suppliers, because they're in the UK, can offer next day delivery of those items to your customers, which makes your customers much, much happier, which then builds up the reputation of your brand because you get this nice positive feedback cycle. Then you get more customers because you have better reviews. And so you'd never get any of that with the dropshipping model from China, which is the traditional model that a lot of people think of when they hear dropshipping.
And we've learned the hard way. And we've come to the bright side now and realized that when you've got a high profit per order, and you've got low ongoing maintenance for a business, it really makes it a joy to run a business in that way. So we'd obviously highly recommend it. But specifically for people that have come into a lump sum of cash, why would they choose a dropshipping business over perhaps property or the stock market?
I think the first reason is because of the cold, hard return on investment from it. Because you can control the net profit that a business that you create makes per month with several different levers that you can pull. With property, you can't really control how much rent you charge beyond a certain point, and you can't really control the performance of the stock market over a short time frame. So I think if you were looking at, say, a way of just multiplying your capital in as short a time frame as possible, think of the example of getting a business to £10,000 per month and then selling it for £300,000. I think you mentioned earlier that the friend of mine that had done that had made 240k in a year. That's true if he sold the business in a year. I don't think he did, but if he had have done, then that would definitely be true. But what that doesn't even consider is all the money he made in the meantime. Because every month the business was making 2k, maybe 3k, 4k, 5k, up to 10,000. Well, he was bringing all that money in. That's like cash he can then take off the table, use to fund his lifestyle, other ventures, things like that. The whole time the business asset value is increasing and he can eventually then sell it. So it's not just a cash flow play. You are also building like industry value or enterprise value so that you can then sell the asset as a whole eventually. If you try and imagine doing that with an investment initially of say £5,000, there aren't many other ways that you can take £5,000 to learn how to build a business and then generate hundreds of thousands of pounds over the course of the first few years in both earnings and then potential sale value as well. So that's one of the reasons why it's just the multiples of return on investment that you can get to in a short time frame. Secondly, dropshipping provides a level of control that's just unmatched by property or the stock market, because as the business owner, you have direct influence over your marketing strategies. Right? So you can choose to run different types of ads, use different ad networks, scale your ad spend up, bring it down. You could select different products that you want to feature and sell. You can control your pricing. It's your store. You can price the items however you choose. You get to control your customer service, in terms of how many customer service people you have, or how great the customer service you decide to deliver is. But in contrast with property and the stock market investments, it often depends on factors outside your control. So you're relying on I hope rents go up in this area, or I hope property prices go up in this area, or I hope we go into a bull market at the point that I invest. And those things make me a little bit uncomfortable because they're so outside of my control.
Yeah, that control element is huge that we have over the business. If we go into the business option to really get a large return on investment, you can get really good at your own business. You can learn about e-commerce, learn about dropshipping, learn about how to improve your margins, and massively increase the amount that business is worth. Whereas you can't get good at the stock market because it's businesses on your behalf that are working to increase the value of those stocks. So it's a huge difference, isn't it, really, when you think about the control you have over a business?
Yeah, exactly. The other thing to mention is that with dropshipping, as well as the control that you have, is the scalability of it. You're not limited by physical constraints like property sourcing, or deal sourcing, or locations, or making sure that you find the right deal for the right price. Or even if you are doing a traditional e-commerce business, you're not constrained by things like quantity of stock that you can take in, or the capital that you can afford to buy stock, because you're not buying stock up front anyway. So as long as your suppliers are reliable and have factored scale into their own forecasting, like they have enough product on the shelves for you to be able to send out to customers, then there's no real ceiling within reason to your growth. It's really based on market demand, which, by the way, is one of the criteria that we would look at when launching a business like this. So we can be sure there's high demand before we even take the first step of trying to grow a business like this. So that's one of the huge benefits, is scalability, and doing so while running it remotely from a laptop. We're not talking about scalability, but you need to sacrifice all your time and be in the office 12 hours a day and never see your family. You can run this business from a laptop from anywhere on the planet with relatively low stress, certainly very low overheads, a few £1,000s to get it set up in the first place. But ultimately, the output is you get complete autonomy and control over how you spend your time and with who. And that's one of the most valuable things I think that this business model can provide. You're not getting any middle of the night phone calls from tenants asking about, problems with the property that you need to rush and fix as a landlord. Imagine doing that at scale when you've got hundreds of properties. You need to have a company managing it who take a huge percentage of the profit, so there are all these other factors to consider. When it's your business, you can have a customer service team in place and you can really just step back from it, and it becomes a very passive income generating instrument once you've front loaded the work and set up those systems.
I think a lot of people have a limiting belief that they believe if they were to go into a business with their cash, that it would therefore take them away from their family, take them away from their kids. Because if you're going to make money in business, you have to put your whole life into it. But I believe that is a limiting belief. And I've seen it in person, that the businesses that we run, they really do become a lifestyle business where, because you've decided this particular business model where you can outsource almost everything, you can actually increase the amount of time you spend with your family while still running and growing a profitable and highly profitable business. So I'd like to shatter that limiting belief. If you're the type of person that's thinking about the options that you have and thinking that business is going to be taking you away from family, I don't think that's the case. Actually, if you think about this model, you can see how your money will really work for you. So Lewis, say somebody does decide to go down this route and they decide to invest this lump sum of cash into growing and building a high-ticket dropshipping business. What are the key steps for them to know so that they can launch their online business successfully?
Yep. So there are some key steps, and the order and the sequence of steps is essential in getting this right. So it's a bit like building a house. You don't just start with the roof, and then try and factor everything in underneath later. We're starting with the foundations, right? We're setting up the right company structure from day one. We're setting up the bank accounts so that at the end of the first week of our program of working with us directly, you'll have the infrastructure, you'll have the foundations in place to set you up for success in the long run. Then in week 2, we'd conduct market research. So the idea of week 2 is we're identifying a profitable market or a list of profitable industries, niches, And we have about 9 different data-driven criteria in week 2 of our Dropship Unlocked mentorship program. So it's all data-backed. It's not based on gut instinct or feeling, or do you think this niche would work? How do you feel about this niche? It's not feeling-based. It's very much numbers-based, data-based. You can then overlay your feelings on the numbers after and say, right, well, I've got 6 contenders here for niches that I know would work based on the data. Which one do I want to build a business around? There's no problem with that, but the problem is when people start with emotion and not data. So we overcome that in week 2 so that by the end of week 2, you have been guided through our years of experiences and mistakes and navigated along a path to being in an industry that you've decided meets all of the 9 criteria of our data and our criteria that we look at for selecting a market, so that you're confident in your selection before we even move ahead and start building the business. Then the next part is actually setting up your store. So in week 3, we guide you through step-by-step over-the-shoulder tutorials. So it's like you're just sitting at the desk next to us watching every single click of the mouse, so that by the end of week 3, you have your store built, it's up and running, everything's looking professionally branded, it appeals to suppliers, it appeals to customers, so that in week 4, you can then work with this and we give you the supplier scripts, we give you the contact scripts, the email scripts, what we say to suppliers, how we structure the contracts, all of that stuff, so that you then know how to sign those suppliers, what to say to them. And once you've signed them at the end of week 4, you're ready to start running traffic to your store. And remember, these are suppliers who can offer fast next day delivery of in-demand products to your customers in the UK. So then week 5, we've got to start getting some traffic. So that's where we then show you how we use things like Google ads and Facebook and Instagram ads to really remarket to people, so that by the end of that week 5, you've got traffic coming to your store that's of high quality that you can profitably convert into paying customers and continue to do so, because that's the secret to scaling. You've got customers purchasing from your store at this stage, whether you're asleep at the time or on a plane or out for a walk. You've got customers coming to your website now and purchasing. And then in week 6, it's all about putting systems in place. So ensuring that you're not the one that then has to deal with all of the admin that comes out of that. So making sure that we've got a virtual assistant hired. So we give you our job hire template, we give you the job spec, we show you exactly how we structure the projects, the SOPs, the systems, all of the tracking stuff, so that you can sit back and at the end of week 6, you can really let the business start to run itself and you can kind of just relax and enjoy the lifestyle that it's provided you, or you can choose to get involved and optimize it, tweak it, and make it better, more profitable, So this is the way we do it. But alongside the actual step-by-step training part, probably the most important part of what we do and what working with us entails is the community we have. It's the community of hundreds of like-minded entrepreneurs in e-commerce who are all on the same journey. Many of them actually much further ahead than you, so they've often made the mistakes or have had the questions that you now have, and they're just there to help. They're there to learn from, to network with, to make friends with, and we even have 2 live Q&A coaching calls per week where you can ask us questions directly, not just over chat, but actually on Zoom, unmuted, twice a week. Ask any questions you have, because that's what you need, I think, when you start a business. You can't just expect to, type in a few questions and have them answered and then be like, okay, great, I've got a business. You're going to have questions. There are going to be road bumps along the way. So I think it's the key part that most online courses miss and where they fall down on. But with ours, because it's mentorship, it's step by step, it's, us holding your hand to get the business up and running. It's the mentorship, it's the community that I wish I'd had that's specific to the UK that would have helped so much when I was starting out. So in a nutshell, that's what we do to get the business up and running.
And the community point is so huge. I can speak. The Dropship Unlocked community that we've built is an absolute pleasure to be a part of. And anyone that listens, I know that some members listen to the podcast, so they'll know what I'm talking about. It is such a friendly, helpful community. And if you decide to go into business with this lump sum of cash you've got, you'll have questions. If it's new to you especially, you'll need people around you that are going to support you the whole way. And by having a community and some mentors within that community around you, it's really going to push you along and take you a long way in your business journey. So I know a big reason for people that start dropshipping is actually the low risk element of it and the fact that we can start with low upfront cost. So would you say that dropshipping is one of the lowest risk businesses to start out there?
Certainly, yeah. Specifically within the e-commerce sector as well, I think the concept of high-ticket dropshipping is nice because you don't need to make large upfront inventory investment. You don't need to pay tens of thousands of pounds for a container worth of product from China that may arrive and be of questionable quality and actually not be saleable, and so therefore what do you do with it? You have to throw it away. We're not taking that risk because anything that we have to buy from a supplier has already been sold in our store, and we're using the customer's funds to then purchase the item. So huge retailers like Wayfair, like Argos, like Tesco, like Homebase, like they do this every day. So it's nothing new. It's just a fulfillment model that in recent times people found out about and started trying to do the model from China. But this direct to consumer fulfillment is not a new concept. It's been around since prior to the internet even existing. But the nice thing is that in terms of the risk, it really lowers the runway that's required, right? It lowers the buffer amount that you have. So if you have just a few £1,000s, you can invest into starting a business like this, and then you're completely location independent. So you could go and live like I did in somewhere like Chiang Mai, in a really location independent city that allows you to be a digital nomad and to have a very high quality of life for a very low cost of living, and do that. Equally, you could just work from home, and be able to spend time with your families or work from a co-working space. But the nice thing is you're only buying those products once the item has already been sold. So you're not using your own cash to do this. It reminds me of a lady that came to us the other day, actually, looking to join Dropship Unlocked. And she said that she had just over the last year had made the mistake of trying to launch a brand. I think it was in the fashion industry. And she'd spent £70,000 of her and her partner's money on products that they and like business setup costs that they hoped would sell, and they tried everything. They threw all the different ads at it. They tried SEO. They tried the different platforms, and they couldn't get it to work. And they were just like, "What's going on?" And I think they kind of came to that realization eventually that you can't force unpopular products on a market. It doesn't matter how much you throw into the products and how, like, if they're not in demand, if they're not what the market wants, it's going to be an uphill battle. And so the whole thing kind of crumbled. She'd taken this huge risk, and it's horrible to hear. But I think that with the home turf advantage model, you would have avoided those things, both of those things, because firstly, you'd only be selling proven in-demand products anyway, but you'd also never pay for them until the customers had already paid you. So it really does mitigate that risk on both fronts. So yeah, much lower risk business model than even most e-commerce types of business model.
Certainly. She's learned a great lesson there that she'll remember. Unfortunately for everyone listening, we can learn from that lesson without having to lose the £70,000 ourselves. So thank you for sharing that. I think a great sort of analogy that I like to use when you choose high ticket dropshipping is that runway analogy. So because there's such low ongoing cost, we haven't got to invest in looking after stock. And it's a low cost to have your Shopify store up and running. It lengthens that runway. So if you imagine a plane going down a runway, the longer that runway is, the more time you've got until you need to take off. And with your business, it really lengthens that because the ongoing monthly cost is so low. But also it has another effect in that you actually need less speed as a plane to get off the ground, I imagine, because you've got that much more profit per order, that with less orders, you can generate enough speed to get off the ground and really launch your business. So I like using that analogy in my head. And that's the reason why I chose high ticket dropshipping.
Yeah, exactly. I love the plane, the runway analogy. And I think I can relate to that. When I lived in Chiang Mai, I remember the first day of the month, if we made 2 sales and say each sale was £400 net profit per sale, on day 1 of the month, I'd be like, okay, well, rent and living expenses are now covered for the month. The rest of it is like fun money, beyond from day 2 to day 30 in the month is now the money that I can start to bank as a business and reinvest because our living expenses are covered in day 1. Obviously, the same is not true often about living in the UK, depending on where you live. Certainly not if you're anywhere near London. But yeah, like on day 1 of the month, it's nice to know that because of such a long runway of living in such a low cost of living place, you only need a few sales of the high ticket variety to have plenty of profit to live on comfortably.
It's a great place to be. After the first few sales of the month, you know that the ongoing costs and your living costs are covered, and then you're in the green from there on in, which is a nice place to be. So I also like the high ticket drop shipping model because it has the long-term sustainable income stream that you can build from it. It's not a flash in the pan business that I've tried before with selling cheap products from China. And after years, it's really taking off and growing every year exponentially. So how can our listeners ensure that they build a sustainable e-commerce brand?
Yeah, for sustainability with a business like this, I think consistency and adaptability are going to be key, because over time, market trends will change. So you've got to be willing to evolve with them. And one of the ways that we can do that is prioritizing customer service from the outset. And I don't just mean servicing customer demand and questions, but actually listening to the customers, figuring out, do they want something slightly different to what we're selling? And if so, do we need to adapt and evolve as a company in order to provide and deliver that? The other thing it means, if you can really get customer service right, is that you'll get lots of repeat business and customer referrals, which is fantastic. So one of the things that we can do to ensure sustainability as well over the long term is keep a very close eye on our numbers, on our metrics. So whether that's in marketing campaign performance, looking at our conversion value over cost, or looking at our return on ad spend for ad campaigns, or even just looking at customer satisfaction ratings and just figuring out, what we're doing and the service that we're delivering resonating with customers? Do they like it? If not, how can we adapt? And yeah, I think one of the things that I learned very early on, and what I now teach inside week 1, I believe it is, of Dropship Unlocked, is getting your numbers right from the outset, making sure that you know the things that you want to be tracking to scale up profitably, rather than just scaling up for the sake of it, but realizing you're doing so and building the business to be less and less profitable as you do so. Because that's an easy thing to do. It might sound simple and it might sound obvious, but so many entrepreneurs who've never run businesses before miss this part unless they track their numbers correctly from the outset. So we give you all the templates, we give you all the lessons that we've learned the hard and expensive way, and just allow you to focus on scaling and turning that initial lump sum investment into a much larger lump sum over the long term, and a sustainable ongoing income from it.
And you get to a point where you just look at the important numbers on a daily, weekly basis to make sure you know what you're looking at, make sure the business is healthy. And also, from time to time, my VAs and my team bring to my attention a nice email that we received from customers. And just yesterday, we received an email from a customer who said, because I had such a great experience with you last year, we'd like to place another order 12 months later. And it's those sort of emails that is a great sign of the business health, to show that we didn't need to pay any more to acquire that customer. And they've had a great experience 12 months ago, so they're ready to come back and buy with us, and hopefully for many more years to come as well. So thank you for all that advice, Lewis, on where to invest money, and also how to invest money specifically in high-ticket dropshipping. There's loads of advice there for listeners to think about. Before we go into the next section of the show, where we answer a question from a listener, for those who are listening and excited by the prospect of working with you and want to use their lump sum to invest in starting a dropshipping business, what would you recommend that they do next?
Absolutely. So, I mean, for those people who are starting their journey but are looking for that first step on what to actually do first, I think the first thing you've got to do is really educate yourself thoroughly about high-ticket dropshipping. Now, the model that we use and that we teach now is the home turf advantage model. So if you're in the UK, this is going to be specific for you. So this would be the method that I would follow if I were in the UK wanting to get started on this. And I think it's just understanding that business model in depth that will be essential for your long-term success. Also, for a more hands-on learning experience, you might want to consider joining a mentorship program like ours, because we provide that step-by-step guidance and support to help you launch and grow your dropshipping business. But if you're not ready for that and you just want to learn a bit more about what we do, we have a free training that goes over how you can get started with high-ticket dropshipping. So you can register for that on our website. It's at dropshipunlocked.com/free. And yeah, just remember that the key to any success is action. Once you've learned the basics, don't be afraid to take that first step. Whatever it is, do something today that gets you a step closer to launching your online store. So if you choose to join us at Dropship Unlocked and implement the home turf advantage model, if you're in the UK, then I really look forward to seeing you inside our community. Just a quick heads up, if you'd like to share your questions, stories, successes, or challenges, you can email us directly at podcast@dropshipunlocked.com. And you never know, we might even feature you on the next podcast episode.
Also, if you want access to today's show notes or any of the resources we've mentioned in the episode today, then head over to dropshipunlocked.com/podcast. We also have a small favour to ask of you. If you enjoyed the show so far, if you could take a minute to leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice.
You wouldn't believe how much your reviews help us grow the podcast. We'll even read out some of our favourites on the next episode. So if you want to be featured on the show, please do go ahead and leave us a review today. Thanks so much for your support. We really couldn't do it without you, and we absolutely love hearing what you think of the podcast.
Now let's answer a question from a listener. And remember, if you want to get your questions answered on the podcast, then all you need to do is email us. It's podcast@dropshipunlocked.com. So this week, the question has come in from Lil Jumper 4439, and they have asked, after someone orders from your store, how exactly do you go about fulfilling that order? Do you ask the supplier to brand the package with your logo, or do they just buy it directly from the supplier and they'll send it directly to your customer with no logo or any sort of branding?
Great question, and thank you very much for asking, because I think this highlights a key difference between the private label type of e-commerce that you might be thinking of and the home turf advantage model of dropshipping that we teach. So with our model, it's really simple. The customer places the order, so you get that nice ka-ching notification come through on your phone saying you've just made a new sale, say it's for £2,000. We then inform the supplier via email that we've had an order through for that product, and we tell them, we've got an order for this product, could you just let us know it's available, ready to go? They say, yep, it's available, ready to go, and maybe it's £1,400, but they want to charge us trade price, because remember, we are one of their retailers, so they give us trade pricing, which they would give to other retailers as well. We won't be their only retailer for those products. So we then capture the customer's payment. So we capture that £2,000. That then comes through to our bank account. And at that point, we can then pay the supplier the $1,400, and the supplier sends out the item directly to the customer. And then we can just upload like the tracking number into the order inside Shopify. So the customer gets automatic texts and email notifications telling them when the item will be delivered. And as soon as it's delivered, that's it. Job done. The customer received the item. We received our what's that, £600 profit on the single transaction. And regarding the branding of the packaging, which you asked about, no, we don't have to rebrand the package. We don't have to put our label on it or anything like that, because imagine if a customer was on wayfair.com, right, popular, very big global dropshipping website. Imagine they ordered a Weber barbecue on wayfair.com, right? If you were that customer and you ordered it, and the next day a box arrived to your house and it said Weber barbecue, would you be upset that it didn't say Wayfair on the box? You probably wouldn't, right? You wouldn't care, because you'd know it came from Wayfair because you ordered it the day before, and it would just say the brand name of the barbecue. And often we're leveraging the brand name of some of these bigger suppliers to actually get the customers to our store in the first place, because they haven't heard of us, but they've heard of the brands that we sell. So we can get them to our sites by using that brand popularity. So that's one of the key ingredients of this and what makes it all work. So yeah, it's a really simple process. I made it sound quite manual there because I was talking through step by step. The reality is we get 5, 6, 7 orders like that every single day on our stores, and it's all outsourced. Most of it's automated, but any of the actual human elements are outsourced. And so I'm not even doing it myself. My team would do that order after order, day after day. So I don't really get involved on that front. That's how it works.
Perfect. Thank you for running us through that process. Thank you for your question, Lil Jumper. Appreciate that. And now let's read out a listener review. So it was Sam who left this nice review for us recently. He sent an email actually to say, "Hi, Lewis, James and the team. Please find attached screenshots of me subscribing to your new pod. And I've also left a review. Can't wait to hear more." That's from Sam.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much for your review, Sam. And thank you for sharing that you also left the review and the rating as well. We're really happy to hear that you're enjoying the podcast and finding value from it. And please do get in touch if you'd like to share your review. If you'd like to be featured on our podcast, then I'd invite you to leave us a rating or review on whichever platform that you're listening to us on today. Or alternatively, if you're on YouTube and you're watching us, then you can leave us a comment on our YouTube channel and we might just read it out on the next episode. And remember, if you know anybody else who's maybe considering starting their own business, why not share this episode with them? Because your simple act of sharing could become a significant turning point in their entrepreneurial journey. It might provide that spark that they need to leap into action. So don't hesitate. Just share this episode, whether it's on social media, through WhatsApp, through text. Send it to someone right now who's considering entrepreneurship as a route, because it might just become part of someone else's entrepreneurial success and they'll have you to thank for it.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. We hope you found today's episode useful and inspiring.
Remember, if you're ready to take the next step towards creating your own high-ticket dropshipping business, our step-by-step mentorship program can help. Just head to dropshipunlocked.com/free free to learn more and get started on your own journey to financial independence.
Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss another episode, and leave us a review if you've enjoyed what you hear today. We love hearing from our listeners, and we'll even read out some reviews on the next episode.
And finally, thanks for choosing to spend your time with us today. We really appreciate you, and we'll be back soon with more valuable insights and tips on high-ticket dropshipping.